there is one thing that I wanted to say pertaining to PM Lee, 4G, PM Lee's legacy. One of the things that Singaporeans like to see, right? One of the things that Singaporeans like to say is, if LKY was around, this wouldn't have happened. Any incident, right? These are the ones who actually like Lee Kuan Yew more than they like PAP, right? So they are extremely respectful of Lee Kuan Yew and would never criticize Lee Kuan Yew, but they would criticize. They are happy to criticize the PAP after Lee Kuan Yew, right? So one of the things they like to say, if Lee Kuan Yew was around, this wouldn't have happened, right? I've heard this over the past few days as well, right? Someone said to me, "Oh, I never thought I would live during a time where there was a corruption scandal in PAP." What? Do you know that that happened also under Lee Kuan Yew? As I said, you can legislate for these things, right? I give another example. During the presidential election in 2017, hi Zach. So in 2017, the reserve presidency, there was when race was a factor, a lot of people who were against it said, "Oh, if Mr. Lee was around, he would never have let race matter in elections." Have you taken a look at your own constituency? Do you know about the GRC? That happened during Lee Kuan Yew's time, but the tail end of Lee Kuan Yew's time, but it was discussed then, and he was supportive of it, and he led it. So I think we cannot rewrite history, right? And when we rewrite history, we create again an unnecessary standard to be met, or for the current leaders to be judged against. And Lee Kuan Yew's legacy, of course, it's you cannot dispute his legacy. A lot of the good things that happened in this country was happened during his time, and because of him, it was continued, and his legacy was institutionalized in a lot of institutions, including the PAP. The PAP has survived Lee Kuan Yew, right? A post-Lee Kuan Yew era, right? So it's not as if we're entering a post-Lee Kuan Yew era in 2023, right? So of course, while acknowledging that there is no perfection this side of heaven, I cannot believe that. I'm quoting former Ambassador Bilahari Kausikan, but he liked to say that, and I completely agree. We are not perfect. He says we are not. There is no perfection this side of heaven, right? And we were not perfect under Lee Kuan Yew as well, right? So there were things that happened, and Lee Kuan Yew dealt with them. As I said, there's no way to legislate for these things. He said that himself, right? Go and take a look at his videos, right? Teh Cheng Wan case, Pei Yu Kok, and so on. In fact, now, of course, and this happens, it's not unique to Singapore, everywhere else as well, that we mythicize or romanticize older leaders that we have an affinity with, right? But if you look at Lee Kuan Yew's vote shares, right, before he stepped down as Prime Minister, 1980, 77.7% votes. 1984, 64.8%. 1981, 63.2%. 1988, 63.2%. So 1984, 64.8. 1988, final general election before he handed over to ESM Goh Chok Tong, 63.2. And of course, Goh Chok Tong's one is 61, right? So 64 to 63, and of course it went down again. But it was already on the decline, right? So, and that happened under Lee Kuan Yew. That vote share was decreasing. What's my point? My point is we cannot romanticize the past and judge Lee Hsien Loong, or even worse, if we judge Lawrence Wong by a version of Lee Kuan Yew that didn't even happen, right? So we must be careful, and we must be fair also when we are judging, right? and we cannot use the stick to beat. And I just final word on this, right? I am not so arrogant, right, to think that I know Lee Kuan Yew better than his eldest son, right? I don't have that arrogance in me. So that's yes, good old days bias indeed. This is a bias of human nature, so we need to acknowledge it. I'm done with part 2. So if you have comments other than me quoting Ambassador Vilari, Megan, feel free to type them in, or if you have questions about this particular topic, I'll take the questions now before I move on to the third one, which is the GRC system. Okay, no comments or questions, so I'll move on. GRC system. Okay, so now there are 6 empty seats in Parliament, right? Raisa said SM Tamans, Leon, Tan Chuan Jin, S. Iswaran, Cheng Li Hui. It's 6 seats, and who knows, as I said, whether there are going to be more seats. What does this tell us about the GRC system? Yes, it's not. Yes, Audrey, somebody got it. My brother-in-law made this for me. Teh Tarik with Walid. Some merch. I'm not selling it yet because nobody will buy. So what does that tell us about the GRC system? And PM Lee said that that's the advantage of the GRC system, because somebody else can cover for that. He said this in the presser. I think there are questions to be. By the way, I am supportive. I was supportive of the GRC system. So I disagree with the opposition on this. I disagree with WP and SDP and so on. I've mentioned it before, and those who follow the series will know. But I do think that we need to think about the GRC in the sense that if somebody leaves and a by-election is not required, a by-election is only required when everybody leaves, right? Of course, if you want to have a by-election, can, but it's not required. But an SMC, if you leave, then the by-election is mandated, right? The Prime Minister has discretion when, not if, and that's what the court ruled. When, not if, to call a by-election. So now, if I voted for 5 MPs and one of them leave, that means I am underserved. There's no way getting around it. I am underserved. One of the 5 that I voted for, and that's based on population size already, right? So it is a loss to the voters there, right? It is a loss to the voters there. The matter is compounded if it's the head of the GRC that left. And SM Taman, I think it's uncontroversial to say, the PAP team gets the most votes in Jurong because of SM Taman, right? I've made this claim before in my class usually. I don't know whether I've said it in previous episodes, but if any 4 of us here were running, right? Me, Laili, I'll just read the names, Audrey, Mirza, and Darren, right? 4 of us, any 4 of us, right, were running with SM Taman, we would be members of parliament as well. And I am not saying anything about the other MPs in Jurong GRC. I like SPS Rahayu a lot. I think she's extremely intelligent. I like her a lot. I think she's a good MP. She would probably win on her own as well. But you cannot deny the SM Taman polling power, right? That's my point. So I think we really need to consider this. And what are the ways? Like for me, the constitution now requires that the GRCs be 3 to 6, even though now it's 4 and 5, but it can be minimum of 3, maximum of 6, right? At the very least, if we do not want to change the constitution, I say we go back to 3, right? But I would go one step further and I say retain the GRC but have 2-person GRCs. A 2-person GRC, and if somebody lives in that, you call for a by-election, right? Now, why am I in favor of the GRCs. I think the opposition cannot have it both ways, or people who disagree with the GRCs cannot have it both ways. You cannot say that racism in Singapore exists, however racial voting doesn't exist. You cannot say race matters and even if racism doesn't exist. Race matters, but elections don't. Race matters, but race matters in life, however it doesn't matter in elections. Okay, so I think you cannot have it both ways. So we need to think about that. The 2% GRCs, I think it's definitely something I am in favor of. It's definitely something I advocate. Okay, so that is what I have to say about the GRCs, and I think the concept I would like to retain. I am with the PAP on this. I think it does encourage multiracial campaigning, in addition to guaranteeing minority representation. And I think looking at the examples of other countries, the multiracial campaigning is something that we cannot underemphasize. It's really crucial, I think. Yeah. Okay, so how would the town council system be factored into 2-member GRCs? Town council for me is not so crucial. Town council was created after the GRCs. If you have the GRCs, you can amend the town council system as well. The 2% GRC was suggested by Jofri Mahmud during the debate. I don't know whether it was suggested by him. If you are referring to the same debate that I am, in that what he suggested was all SMCs. So Jofri Mahmud suggested all SMCs, and Jofri said that some of the SMCs, the ruling party has the prerogative. So if the ruling party feels a Malay, the opposition has to feel a Malay as well. If the ruling party feels an Indian, the opposition has to feel an Indian as well. That was his suggestion in that debate. In your version of 2 people GRC, do you think it will be difficult to find enough minority candidates? There's no difference. It's not 50% minority, by the way. Okay, so let me clarify. So let's say there are 90. Okay, let's use 100. Okay, let's use 100 seats. There are 100 seats. 14 of the GRCs are reserved for Malays. So 14 times 2, there will be 28 seats. Why 14? Because 14% to 15% are Malays. So 8%, 8 to 10% are Indians and others. So let's say we use 9. Okay, 9 times 2. So that will be 18. So there will be 9 Indians, 9 Indians or others, 14 Malays. So 28 plus 18, this is 46. So you'll have 54 SMCs. So you have the GRCs, 2% GRCs, only the number that's proportional to their race. Okay, so it wouldn't be 50% exactly. Yeah, so it wouldn't be all GRCs. It will be, the rest all will be SMCs, and SMCs, Indians, Malays, anything can contest, and it doesn't matter, just as now, just as we have it now, right? Just that we have few. Having an equal number of, so there's a question. Yes, the GRC is 1 Chinese, 1 minority. Yeah. So Trevor asked, what about having an equal number of 4-member GRCs coupled by equal number of SMCs? I think a 2-member GRC still takes away a lot of the problems of the GRCs, riding on the coattails and this, resigning and so on, and then it's clearer that you would need a by-election. Should the mayor take over the responsibility? The mayor position for me shouldn't even exist, right? So definitely not. What should determine whether a precinct is a GRC or a SMC? That's a very good question. So the president decides, of course, in consultation with the relevant government agencies. The president gets to allocate the GRCs, right? Whether it's Indians or Malays. or other, in Malays or Indians or others. So, and that's usually based on the proportion. Even though there is an upper limit, right, of Malays and Indians in a GRC, there are some areas with more Malays, some areas with more Indians. Relatively, all of them would still be minorities in their own areas, but relatively, right? So I think that would be that should be the way. Base whichever GRC has, whichever area has more Malays or minorities, those are relatively more, okay, because they'll never be more than 50% or even 40 plus percent. So relatively more, those should be the ones with GRCs, right? What about local government elections? I'm not sure what you mean in this regard, right? Singapore having local government elections, what do you mean? We don't have local governments in Singapore, right? So that seems like a Malaysian or an American thing. Okay. Any more questions about the GRCs? Based on population number in the area, you can just draw according to however it is, right? You can carve out an SMC based on, technically, if you want the entire map to be SMCs, you can just make them according to the same population size. Unless I'm not understanding your question, Rebecca. Is there a likelihood or must for 2 Indian MPs to replace the 2 outgoing ministers? Well, in SM Taman's case, let me just check. Jurong GRC, it's probably Indian and others, right? So I have it in one of my notes. But in any case, I'll take the more independent elections. What are your thoughts on? I'll get back to that. There was a suggestion to instead, with the loving critic, instead of GRC, suggestion to introduce 2 houses in Parliament. I'm not a fan, because usually in the Westminster types, the upper house are selected. They are not elected based on something. So I'm not a fan of that, right? For me, a lower house, all elections, much easier. Okay, by the way, GRCs with 1 member belonging to Indian or other minority communities currently Ang Mo Kio, Holland, Bukit Timah, Jurong, Nisun, Tanjong Pagar and West Coast. So in Jurong, yes, there needs to be a replacement. What's the other one that you're asking? Aljunied, no, you don't need. You already have Faizal Manap there. Sengkang, yes, you need a Malay. Do you think short staffing will occur with 2 people GRCs? What do you mean, Sharon? I'm not sure what you mean. Town council should be separated from the parliamentary process and be elected separately via municipal elections. I am not opposed to it, but that's not, to be honest, that's not something I would campaign for, okay? That's not something I would campaign for. Oh, suppose you are not a fan of the NMP and NCMP positions. I don't know how you came to that conclusion. The Maverick Travel. I am quite a fan of the NMP position, which I'll get to. The NMP scheme I'll get to later on. NCMP, I'm more agnostic about it. I think it's okay. I would be okay with it being removed. I'm okay with it being there as well. So I am agnostic about that. How would mixed race families factor into such a system? That's a good question, especially since 25% of marriages, I think, or close to that, mixed marriages. So officially you just, because now the child can also choose later on, right? So if you're double barrel, you can choose whether to have one, whether you want to remove one later on, or whatever it is, right? So you can choose, and I think as long as you choose, you have the choice to choose. And after that, that's how you should be identified with, right? If you choose the double barrel, then I think the convention is you choose the one, the government uses the one that is first. But for me, you can expand that as well. You can belong to either one. Technically, my son is a mixed race son, right? So I'm Indian and my wife is Malay, so he will be double-barreled as well. Oh, so based on nominated individuals serve in the initial question of a upper house. No, I'm not a fan of the upper house. The NMP scheme, I think I have some suggestions as well about what I think is right and what I think is not right. Now, so Sharon's question was, is it more effective? You mean administratively? Yes, probably. It would also be more efficient administratively to have maybe 10 people GRCs, right? You pool resources, right? But what we want to do is to create a system that is more democratic, right? More democratic while maintaining safeguards for minorities, for instance. And I think the efficiency of town council is such a minor benefit that can easily be overtaken by the benefits of having smaller size GRCs. Final question on this before I move on to the role of speaker, and it's 1 hour already. Trying hard to stay awake as well. Okay, no more questions. I'll move on to the fourth one. So the role of the Speaker of Parliament, especially, and this is related to the hot mic incident, and people are talking about him being partial. And of course that is the case. So Vivid Sparkle, should the NMP scheme be under the presidential office instead? Absolutely. That is one of my suggestions later, but I'll get to that. So the Speaker of Parliament, yes, the Speaker of Parliament must be seen to be impartial, right? So now, it is a fact that the Speaker of Parliament will come from the ruling party, and now the ruling party is a PAP, so that's a fact. And so the fact that you belong to the party, obviously you agree with the party's views and so on, right? So that's obvious, right? What do we do since that's the system? Right. So one is, it's incumbent for the PM to nominate a speaker for me that is respected across the aisle and can get along with both the opposition and of course will get along with the ruling party, but can get along with the opposition and the NMPs as well. Now, interestingly, our constitution doesn't require that the speaker be a member of parliament. Our constitution doesn't require that. So technically, you can even appoint somebody else. The PM can appoint somebody else, right? So that could be a way to go, and I would be a fan of that, especially a judge or something, a senior judge, resigns and becomes Speaker of Parliament. I would be a fan of that, he or she knows the law and so on. However, that is I think quite far away. I don't know, maybe it can happen. One of the things that we can do, and this is what I would like to advocate, again, it may be a pipe dream, but I think it's possible. So in some countries like the UK, if the speaker, even though the speaker comes from a party, if everybody knows that that person is gonna be the speaker, right, or was the speaker, the opposition doesn't contest in that ward. Doesn't contest in that ward because we give it, we want the Speaker of Parliament to win without a contest, so that it's more likely that the Speaker of Parliament will be impartial. Now that requires a maturity from both the ruling party and the opposition, because if the Prime Minister says, I'm going to nominate this person, then the opposition says, okay, I will not contest there, right? But it has to be an SMC. It cannot be, oh, I'm going to nominate that person, and then it's a 5% GRC, and then everybody else comes. It's not the speaker campaigns as an independent. It's more of the speaker seat, right? So the speaker is there, opposition all know, then you do not contest, right? There are a lot of people saying me as speaker. No. I have enough on my plate already, right? I don't. As in, yeah. On a more serious note, I think it must be someone with a more acute familiarity with the law. Right? So that's something that, of course, you can learn. It's not always that our speakers are lawyers, right? But I think it does help. They are still bound to hold biases. Of course, human beings, no one is bias free, right? No one is bias free, right? Now we are trying to create institutions to mitigate those biases. Right? We cannot, again, as I said, again, I'm quoting him, there is no perfection this side of heaven. Right? Make an exception for the speaker to resign as a party member without losing his or her parliamentary seat. So they have to contest in elections under a party and then resign, and then in the next election what happens? Right, so I think the best one, the easiest one would be speaker contest SMC, the opposition do not contest. That's it. The Speaker of Parliament is a pretty powerful position, right? Because you get to decide proceedings, what motions get discussed, and so on. You can even ban MPs from Parliament if you deem them to have broken some parliamentary law or statute, and so on. You're also third in line to the second after the president, right? So president, and then the chairman of the presidential committee, council, and then council of advisors. And if both of them are not around, then the Speaker of Parliament becomes the acting president. Right? So that's what I would suggest for the Speaker of Parliament. That's what we need to do in order to make it more impartial. Now, having said that, as I said, that's heavy lifting. But in the immediate term, I think the PM should nominate somebody who can, who has the respect of the opposition. Right, who is nice to the opposition, and we know some MPs are more friendly to the opposition than others. I think, and the PM should choose someone with that predisposition. Any questions on the speaker? So far, no. I have gotten no request for anybody to come in, and we still have 180 people on, so that's good. Okay, just two more. President, who do I think that will be? I don't know, right? So the other thing, there is another side to this. If you put AI can handle the role, oh my God, like please, no man, no, no AI for all this. So there is a conundrum. When you take somebody away from, when somebody becomes a speaker, you are taking that person away from the MP position, right? From the normal MP position. So what happens is, so Arun, I got your request, I'll approve it in a while. So if it's a very strong person who's about to be on the front bench, then you lose a potential policymaker, minister. If it's somebody who's a very good backbencher, so I would say that happened with Madam Halima. She was Minister of State, and we lost that when she became Speaker. I thought she was a very good person who was going to be in the cabinet, minister, or should have been in the cabinet. The next one, if it's a backbencher, if it's a prominent backbencher, like Louis Ng, then you use someone who's gonna advocate for cause. Who's gonna advocate for all the animals? Who's gonna advocate for banning smoking from balconies if Louis Ng becomes the Speaker of Parliament, right? So I think we need to bear that in mind. I'll accept Arun.
Hi, Prof.
Hello. Hi, yes. What do you have?
Actually, I'm going back a few lectures. This is lecture 3, right? So I'm going back to lecture sort of 1 and 2. So I guess I want to challenge what you said earlier about Isharan being replaceable. I think in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the entire 3G plus 4G together, I guess there is definitely an argument to be made that he is replaceable. He's definitely not uh, holding MFA or MINDEF or MOF portfolios at the moment, right? But when you look at it electorally, right, West Coast GRC with him and with um, uh, Desmond Lee as the anchor ministers, they won. The margin of winning was, I think, what, 1 to 3%.
Indeed.
Depending on where I look, it's either 1% or 3%. And that was with two anchor ministers, right? So now we don't yet know the result of how much political capital he will end up losing, but a lot of people feel that he already has taken some damage, right? And I guess at the end of the day, we will still have to wait until after the CPID investigations results are released, and then also finally when people actually vote. Because until you see the votes, people can only speculate and guess.
Yeah.
But given that that is the case, and you now have Tharman not as an anchor minister, so there's no anchor minister there, wouldn't you say that that is still a pretty important, I don't want to say loss because that sound makes it seem like as if he's already not there. But I guess I wanted to know your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Thank you. I think that's definitely true. When I said net negative in terms of quality, I was really referring to importance to the party, right? So I was really referring in terms of Leon and Nicole versus those three, right? So I really think that. However, you are right as well, because West Coast, it was by the skin of the teeth that the PAP won. What I would say is I am not sure whether PSP can replicate that, because there was that Tan Cheng Bock factor, right, that happened. Now, it could be that they can replicate that. And Tan Cheng Bock, he can be a next Mahathir, right? He can be 100 and he's still going strong, right? Who knows, right? Some people are just freaks of nature. You just have to accept that, right? So he still seems healthy. He still seems strong. So if he contests again, maybe that can happen. And it's also interesting to see how Liang Manwai is judged on the ground, because in more elite circles, people like to make fun of him. He's a joke, he's a meme, and sort of all of that. But we don't know, and we can put it to the test. And I think definitely, if you ask me, is the PAP West Coast team weaker without Iswaran? Of course, right? Can they replace him with somebody else? Probably yes, right? They have a line of SMSs, Senior Minister of State, Minister of State. Although I was thinking just now, there was one element that I didn't mention, right? Maybe electorally it wouldn't matter as much, but as a principle for Singapore, it would matter a lot, right? Already there was some, and maybe a lot of people are unaware. Within the Indian community, there was some disquiet in the last election that there was no new Indian candidate, right?
Yeah.
You remember that, Arun?
Yeah.
And then now we've lost potentially, I think likely one Indian minister also. So there needs to be some renewal in that sense as well. But again, as I said, because the PAP has a lot of resources, they probably can be able. Okay, PAP probably will be able to replace Iswaran better than WP can replace Leon and Nicole. Where do you get another Leon from? In my opinion,
Yeah.
Leon is almost at the level of Pritam. Right? He's that
Yeah.
good, almost at that level. So where do you get another Leon from? The most underrated MP, I think, in Singapore. So that was what I meant, and I completely take your point. Thank you, and I think that's a fair critique. Any other criticisms?
Okay. No. Those are the criticisms I had. I think the other thing also, I guess, that was on my mind was uh, when you look at the scandals and this sort of political drama, when you look at it from a historical point of view, in my view, I think they've been framed often as endemic to around opposition parties, but as one-off outliers when it comes to the PAP, right? And there have been times where uh, one could say that, yeah, it seems like there are certain points in time in Singapore's history where there was a lot of drama and scandal and all these sorts of things that happened with surrounding opposition parties. But at the same time, you can also say that an argument could be made that, yeah, in with the PAP, more often than not, they have been one-offs, they have been outliers, because when they have had scandals, more often than not, they tend not to be members of the CEC. More often than not, they tend not to be
Right.
cabinet members. Uh, there are very few instances where it's a
Yeah.
very senior person. Michael Palmer and Teh Wan were some of the only few, right? But over the last several months, all the stuff that's been happening, especially when it comes to the PAP, if more senior members of the PAP team has been involved than backbenchers, at least that we know of, right? Whether or not there were um, actual wrongdoing or not, like in the
Yeah.
readout road stuff, there's no actual wrongdoing, but the public perception does matter a lot, right? They're involved, whether wrongdoing is done or not. Isharan also full minister. Tan Chuan Jin was a full minister and then now Speaker of Parliament. So technically, there's out of all the people involved, there's only one backbencher
Yeah.
was involved. So I guess to what extent this relates to the handover thing that you're talking about,
Yeah.
like 3G to 4G thing. So to what extent do you think this affects the 4G's moral and I guess social capital going into the next GE?
Yeah. Okay. So I want to address that there are two parts to that. One is the first and second. So firstly, I think yes, it's true there is a public perception, but we still need to
Yeah,
to separate. We need to
yeah,
separate. So I don't think that Min Shan and Min Balakrishnan is nearly at the same level as the others, right? Now,
definitely.
if it was, then the PP are in trouble, right? Because no, you said there's front bench and there's senior members, and it's true. Tan Chuan Jin and Ishwaran are senior members. But they're senior members and they're senior members, right? There are ministers and then there are ministers, right? If it was
Yeah,
PM Lee, Min Chan, Min Teo Chee Hen, Taman, if these were involved in a scandal, then the PP is in trouble, I think, right? But right now, I think they are not safe. As I said, they have taken a hit, but because it's people who are more dispensable, right, to
right.
them politically. So I think yes, you are right, but Tan Chuan Jin, I don't think he's senior, right? Iswaran is not senior. They are senior, more senior than Louis Ng, but not senior, right? To the point that it really goes to the heart of the PP. If it was Chan Chun Sing or Lawrence Wong, the 4G senior ones, right? Then I think that would be more of a trouble. Now, having said that, as I said, it definitely doesn't help them. So there will be questions about that. Now, I am somebody who loves, not loves, sorry, I need to, okay, is there any way to delete that later on? I don't love this, okay, but I am okay with high ministerial salaries.
Okay.
Okay, because I live in the real world. Somebody say, oh, but ministers need to serve from the goodness of their heart and public service. I live in the real world. People are
Mm.
motivated by money. As long as that's not the only thing they're motivated by, that's fine. Right? That's fine. So all of us need money to survive anyway, right? So I live in the real world. I'm okay with high ministerial salaries, right? And I am still okay with high ministerial salaries, right? However, I think there will be more questions about high ministerial salaries with Ishwaran's case, right? If there's something, right? They say, hey, if it's to prevent corruption, right? Then but people are still corrupt, then what's the point of this, right? Now, having said that, I think it's a one-off, this particular case, so I think we should still retain it. But I think there will be more questions, and those would be valid questions as well, right? Now
Right,
there's a
right.
question, there's a comment here. It's like chess PAP gave up a bishop and a pawn in exchange for WP's queen and knight. It's not as if both of them are giving that up, right? Both of them, those things happen, right? So I think this is giving too much credit to both parties in terms of thinking strategy, because sometimes shit just happens and the party has to deal with it,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree.
Right.
I guess we'll just
Thank,
have to wait and see, lah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
We just have to
Right.
wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
Thank
much,
you.
Arun. Thank you so much. So yes, 8% GST. That is another thing that will be a factor, right, in the next election. Now, presidential elections. I think the presidential election. Go back to what I said earlier about the three groups, right? The groups, the pro PAP, the anti PAP, and the middle ground. And I say it's 35%, 25%, and then everything between 40 to 45%. Right? So now we do not know who will qualify, who will not. But assuming all three qualify, right? So SM Taman, she definitely qualifies. So you have Taman, you have Kok Song, you have George Go. So if it was just Taman and George Go, it's clear, right? So the entire establishment will vote for George Go, establishment will vote for Taman, and then the middle ground, some of them will go to Taman, some of them will go to George Go, right? It's very clear. Hi, Joel. So if all three candidates are contesting, I think Taman will get that, the pro-establishment, but he'll also get some of the middle ground. Then George Go will get some of the anti-establishment, but not all, because some of them will go to Ng Kok Song as well. Right? But Ng Kok Song will also get some of the middle ground, more so than George Go. Right? So George Go would lose the most from the entry of Ng Kok Song. Taman would still win, I think. But what I would say is SM Taman is the most popular, in my opinion, the most popular candidate in the PAP politician. I would say PM Lee is maybe second, right? Maybe second or first, but they are in the top two. So if SM Taman doesn't get 60 to 70%, I would say you don't get 65%, right? I think that's a worrying sign, right? That's a worrying sign for the PAP, right? Because he is the very best they can offer, with some caveats, right? The caveat is, one, is in a presidential election, people are more willing to vote against the establishment candidate as opposed to a general election, because more are at stake, right? More is at stake in a general election, whereas presidential election, people are able to play more of their votes, right? Second of all, it comes on the back of this series of incidents. So it's not really a referendum on Taman. It's a referendum on the PAP, because people will see Taman as the PAP candidate. How badly will the vote split and affect Taman's chances? It wouldn't affect Taman's chances. I think it would affect George Go more. Of course, as I said, Ng Kok Song would get more of the middle ground, probably. Why would he get more of the middle ground more than George Go? I think because he is more polished, right? And I think Singaporeans are quite brand conscious. They do care about all of this. Now, I've interviewed George Go. I find him, he has an authentic charm about him. I like him. And I think there are some others who think like me as well. But probably a lot of people are still making fun of the way he speaks English and so on. So I would say probably Ng Kok Song is maybe the one who people see as more presidential, right? That's why he would get more of the middle ground. Not that I'm saying George Go is like super anti-establishment or anything, because he's not. He was an ambassador as well, right? How anti-establishment could he be, right? So the question, there are people speculating Ng Kok Song and George Go would not qualify and so on. I don't know. We'll see what happens. what I would say is we need a presidential contest. We need a presidential contest. After what happened in 2017, it is not good for the institution of the presidency. So to whoever is listening, we need to make the presidential contest happen. I really believe that. I believe SM Taman believes that as well. I believe SM Taman said that he wants a contest and it's good for the presidency, the institution of the president, and I do believe that. I do believe that personally, right? So Audrey said he explained that and presented himself quite well with regard to the English handicap. I agree. I agree with you. I think we are in agreement. The question is whether Singaporeans can accept that. And one thing I would say also is maybe as an MP, it's easier to get away with that persona. Not get away. In fact, it may enhance your persona as an MP, right? As a president, maybe people are looking for something different, right? Because the president really represents Singapore on the international stage and so on. That's all I'm saying, right? Here for the public holiday too, I'm all with you guys. How do you think the PE, hi Chiun, how do you think the PE results would affect the GE which follows soon after? And not that the PE results would affect, but the PE results is a barometer of where the public is at. It is really a barometer of how much of the public really support the government. Now, and there are going to be two contradictory trends, right? One is, I would say Taman is probably, I don't know for sure, but I think his popularity exceeds the party's popularity on average, right? If you take the average of all the MPs versus Taman's, I think Taman's popularity exceeds that, right? So you should expect him to get a higher vote share than the PAP would have. However, because it's the presidential election, people are more willing to vote against the establishment candidate. So there is the other effect, right? So probably the latter is going to be more than the former, right? So I think the presidential election, it will tell us a lot about where public sentiment is at. That is what I would say. Can a president finish his or her term and go contest in GE? I still hope he becomes PM. Well, I hope I get $5 million from my Teh Tarik episodes, right? We all can hope, but we also need to live in reality, right? PE is an individual contest, straight settles. So voters don't think of it as a referendum on the party. Not at all. Not at all. People do see the presidential election as a referendum against the establishment. So why does George Goh emphasize that he is independent? Right? Why does even Ng Kok Song in his Instagram post, go and see, he emphasized the fact that he's independent, right? So I do think that you cannot separate the PE from public sentiment about GE or about the parties. And we don't have to look any further than 2011, right? What went on in the GE, that was what happened for the PE as well, right? So I think theoretically the PE is an individual contest, but it's not, right? It's not. If people are not pleased with the government and establishment, should they then vote for Ng Kok Song to deny Taman a resounding victory? Yeah, I think that is what will happen. People who are not pleased with the government will not vote for Taman, right? But as I said, there's still a significant amount of Singaporeans who support the PAP. That's just a reality. I think we cannot deny, and I think it's genuine support. We cannot say they have been propagandized and so on, and that's why they support false consciousness. I never accepted that. You either believe in democracy or you don't. If you believe in democracy, you believe in the democratic outcome. So people choose, and I think people will choose Taman. I think I'm interested to see the margin of victory, right? So that is one. Now, Ng Kok Song is not Tan Cheng Bock, right? Tan Cheng Bock was an MP. He was a PAP MP, right? So obviously 2011 will be different from 2023. Right? So do spot votes have any effect? Yeah, I mean it has. I mean I think in Jalan Besar GRC that was the highest number of spot votes. I believe that was the highest number of spot votes in the 2020 election. But it won't dramatically change the outcome. Won't dramatically change the outcome. Just a note on three-cornered fights. Some people have said, "Oh, why is Ng Kok Song entering?" Right? We should just have George Goh versus Taman, a clean one-on-one fight. Right? So again, you either believe in democracy or you don't, and let voters sort them out. Voters will sort this out. I am never one to say, oh, three-cornered fight, four-cornered fights are not good. Whoever wants to contest, if they earn the vote, they earn the vote. Nobody owes any party or any individual. And this is, I would say, my advice, my exhortation to Singaporeans. We do not owe any party, any individual, any vote. And the moment we say, oh, I support you unconditionally, that's where you lose your relevance as a voter. Right? So either to the PAP, to the opposition, this is my approach, right? So it's never unconditional. I think that is the each of them have to earn our votes, right? So if there are more candidates, there are more candidates, right? Nobody owes anyone any vote. So there are a few more questions. I'll just take one. Let's see which one is quite spicy. Okay, will race be a matter in the PE if all three are eligible, i.e. two Chinese candidates versus one minority? Now, as I said, I am of the opinion that race matters, and it may not even be racism. Right? Racial voting is not racist voting. So someone can have an affinity with a person, partly because of the culture, partly because of the language, and I think that's human nature. To deny that would be a little foolish, right? However, Taman is no ordinary Indian. He's no ordinary minority. He's clearly a cut above many other people, right? Go back to episode 1. What former Professor Yaakob Ibrahim, former Minister Professor Yaakob Ibrahim, he said, and I agree with him on this, right? If you ask generically, you ask people whether you prefer a Chinese, you ask Chinese, especially the older ones, you prefer a Chinese Prime Minister over a minority Prime Minister, they will say yes. But if you say SM Taman, then say yes. Oh, I'm okay with SM Taman. Because SM Taman, I think, does transcend race. Hi, Jess. So Jess Chua, a former, an alumni of Teh Tarik, Walid. She came on the show before. The PAP knows we need to have a contested PE. The fact that Ng Kok only indicates his interest now. Could it be that they have decided George Goh will not qualify for PE? I don't know. It could also be that they want George Goh to contest. I mean, I don't know. It could be because him being in the race, then also the people who didn't want to vote for Taman, their votes will be split as well, right? So I'm not sure what to make of it yet. What I would say is, if the PAP knows we need to have a contested PE, that is extremely positive, right? And I think the country needs it. I cannot emphasize it. The country needs a presidential election. Okay, that's all I have on the presidential election. I am happy, Trevor, if you're still around, to accept you.
Oh yeah, so I guess actually I wrote down a few questions, but I don't think we have time to cover them all. But do you think that, I think one question I have is, do you think that the campaign, the presidential election campaign itself, there's likely going to be some sort of televised debate? If let's say there's going to be more than one candidate, and there'll be rallies and walkabouts, is there a chance that the campaign itself, or rather what happens during the campaign, might throw Taman off balance, and then like throw him off his game and make him more vulnerable?
If you're asking about possibilities, it could.
Yeah.
Of course, anything is possible. But this is not Taman's first election. He's an old cat. He's been doing this a while. It will be the
Yeah.
other two's first elections, right? If
Okay.
you're talking about campaign trip-ups, it's more likely that they will trip up, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I just want to say that if there is going to be a televised debate, right,
Hmm.
I offer my services to Channel 5 and CNA to be the moderator.
Yeah. Please do.
And
Please
in
do.
fact,
Please
I'll go
do.
one step further. I invite
Okay. Good.
all three of them to come on Teh Tarik with Walid, and I will be the moderator, right? The
They have a live
independent and
audience. Have a
neutral
live
moderator.
audience.
I am
Live
happy to do
audience.
that. Live audience with
We do
Dakota
it at
Dreams,
Singapore
I'm sure.
Expo. Do it at
Nick,
Singapore
let's
Expo.
go. We are ready, right? We can do it at a humble place, in
Okay.
at Dakota Dreams, so we can
Okay.
do that. I'm sure Ethos Books, Dakota Dreams will be happy to host us.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm serious about that. I am
Okay.
only half joking. Yeah. So I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So what's your next
Okay.
question?
My next question is, recently Sharon George and Kevin Tan wrote a Academia SG article on the elected presidency. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that article.
Which part specifically? As in, it should be the last. That's one
Yeah,
you're saying.
I think the overarching theme. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So Chiran George, somebody I really respect. Kevin Tan as well knows his stuff. So it's hard to disagree with them. Having said that, I will probably to some extent. Having seen what has happened in the UK and what has happened in Malaysia, right? It does help to have a figure who's above partisan politics as a national reconciliatory unifying figure. When Malaysia was going through whatever it was going through, suddenly like the Agong, the Sultan was respected, and he was people were looking to him to solve this, and he managed to stay above the fray. Now,
Yeah,
the difference,
I mean like buying fast food,
yeah,
buying fast food
yeah,
for people
for
at the
for the
entrance.
reporters and so on,
Yeah.
and he was so warm to them, and even the political parties were respectful to him, right? The
Yeah.
difference is in Singapore, so far the institution has been really tied to the ruling party, especially the past few presidents. And if Taman is gonna win, that makes it 3 in a row, right? Of course you had Ong Teng Chong, was a party member before, even though President Nathan wasn't, but he was still, broadly speaking, part of the establishment, right? So, if I think what needs to happen is to strengthen the independence of the presidency, rather than remove it. Not that I'm saying, Angie, to bring back the monarchy system. Not a fan of the monarchy system. Sorry, my battery 20% left already. So I am not a fan at all. But I can see that the Queen was widely respected, even by those who were anti-monarchy, and his son is not. Her son is not. Her son is not respected to that same extent. So that's the problem with the monarchy. Um, I've never believed in the monarchy, so I am not advocating that. But what I would say is there is some value possibly in the presidency. Yeah. Any other?
Yeah. So actually, just a quick follow up to strengthening the presidency. Just a bit of follow up there. So when you say strengthen, like, can you name like one instance where you think the presidency can be strengthened? Could it be, for example, when it comes to presidential pardons? Right now, I think according to Kevin Tan, Prof. Kevin Tan, he said that the power to pardon is really on the advice of cabinet. So at the end of the day, cabinet controls that decision. But so in that case, do you think, like, for example, in the case of pardon power, should the presidency have more discretion as a form of strengthening the independence of the presidency, for example?
Yes, I think so. I think again, Professor Kevin Tan knows this far better than I do. I'm trying to think just practically, if the president wanted to pardon someone and the president suggested to the cabinet, would the cabinet say no? As an end, I'm just thinking that it's probably not likely, right, that the cabinet would say no
Okay.
on that thing. So I don't know how big of a point this is personally for me. What I would say is it would help if we had presidents who were not associated or affiliated with political parties, right?
Okay.
Or maybe we have a, a time period where, okay, if you resign, then from a political party, maybe you cannot contest for the presidency for 5 years or something, right? In order for you to establish your independence, something like that. It doesn't have to be 5 years. I'm just saying something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I just squeeze in one more
Please.
question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Domino. So just maybe shifting gears a bit. At this point, okay, although this is slightly sidetracking, what about WP's chances going to the next election?
This
Like,
is not slightly sidetracking. Yeah.
okay, but maybe
but it's okay. Continue.
maybe in immediate term, like how much of a wobble? I mean, do you think WP can probably how would it affect their chances in the next election? Like, for example, in East Coast GRC, I mean, since you talk about West Coast possibly being affected by Iswaran, but with East Coast GRC still going to be in play, or presumably in play, how do you think it will affect the campaign there?
Yeah, it will affect it tremendously. They got 48% because of Nicole. There's no way getting around that. So you can expect that since the Nicole factor is not there, they would probably lose some. However, Heng Swee Keat was promised as the Prime Minister, right?
Oh yeah.
How do East Coast residents feel about that, right? Now that he's not the Prime Minister, right? And that was the whole thing, right? Like, vote for him. This is crucial to the country, and so voters may have something to say about that. My family lives in East Coast. I know they have something to say about that. I mean, I grew up as in Sime, yeah. So, so I grew up there. So I'm there most of the time, 80% of the time. So I think many people are asking these questions. So there will be some that it's interesting to see who else they will put in East Coast GRC. But make no mistake about it, the WP is weakened by the loss of Nicole.
Okay. Just one
one more.
question.
You want to squeeze one more?
Yeah, just one more. This is very last. This one's a bit more specific. Actually, can I ask when it comes to I don't know how much you know about this, but I know because presidential elections are non-partisan, right? If let's say I wanted to volunteer as for example, a polling agent or counting agent in a presidential election, it does not require me to. So I mean that's what I'm doing is essentially non-partisan, right?
Yes.
I don't have to join. It's not that I have to sign on with any party organization.
No.
I just have to.
No, not party. Yeah, because the parties are not contesting. For the GE, yes. For the GE, you need to be. I mean, the party nominates the polling agents, right?
Okay.
And I know the parties, a lot of them require you to wear their uniform or their colors on that day for party morale and so on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for presidential election, actually, that's not needed. So
yeah.
Okay.
How many more additional questions do you have?
No, I think that was all because I mean I was just curious because I always like to know what the precinct level results are.
Right.
Because
which is very
DLD
important.
doesn't release
Very
that.
important.
So the only way you would know that is to be a counting agent of some sort. Yeah. Okay. I think other than that, okay, actually just one more. I'm so sorry.
Hey, one more. The third last one already. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, this is the last one. I'll stop here. You said that you prefer that PM go into the next election and then hand over after that. But I'm just wondering, given that this is, I think his 6th general election, if he goes to the next one, I think, or 5th or 6th general election, would he be out of ideas to campaign on at the next GE? Like, I mean, like, you need a team to run on. So, like, I guess my question mark is, would he be out of ideas at the next GE? Like in terms, I mean, I know you said his legacy is secure, and I also think broadly that's the case. I think things like 5 Day Week, MediShield Life, leader of the opposition.
I don't know what you mean by that question. Would
Meaning to say like
Tan Cheng Bock be out of ideas?
no, not Tan Cheng Bock. I mean Lee Hsien Loong.
Why not? It will
Meaning
be
to
the
say
same.
like
It will be the same, isn't it? If he's run so many elections, why would?
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is that would there be a okay? Although voters might appreciate his legacy, but would the PAP have harder time like running kind of a dynamic campaign, or would it be kind of like a recycled campaign?
I
or you don't think that's an issue?
I don't see that as an issue. So first of all, I am a bit troubled by some trends where we worship youth, right, and at the expense of experience and wisdom. So I think we mustn't
Not
go down. I think
Messiah
one
kind
of the
of like-
strengths of Asians is we appreciate older people's wisdom, right? African proverb. All young people walk fast, but old people know the road, right? So I think you need a good mixture of young and old for a party to work. Second of all, it's not as if he's the only old person who's gonna be running, and then the entire party doesn't have young people or something. So I don't think that's gonna be an issue. However, on the part of ideas, right? So the PAP's strength is also its weakness. The PAP is a cadre party. It's a closed party. You are invited to join the party. The party reproduces itself. This is a strength because it reduces the possibility of fissures. It doesn't eliminate it. No system does, but it reduces. It's a weakness because the party reproduces itself. So, as I said before when I did the episode with Megan, I think I don't see substantive differences between Lawrence Wong, Chan Chun Sing and Ong Ye Kung ideologically. Maybe personally, of course, they have their different personalities because of the party structure. So whether it's PM Lee or whether it's DPM Lawrence Wong or whether it's Minister Shanmugam, SM Taman, broadly they are all similar in their ideology. So I don't see why it would be different if PM runs or not. Okay, Trevor.
Yeah, I think that'll be
Thank
all.
you so much.
Yeah,
all right.
We should meet for coffee.
Okay, yes,
So-
please. Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bro.
All right, so let's move on to the NMPs, and you can leave, Trevor. Yeah, so NMP's final one. I've said before, I am a fan of the NMP scheme. Based on the system we have a dominant one-party system, and the opposition also may not want to raise issues which are deemed to be too controversial, and NMPs are in a better position to do so, right? However, what I would say is NMPs need to realize this. This is the first thing. Second thing, there needs to be more transparency in how NMPs are chosen, right? Who are the ones who submit their names? Why are they chosen? Why are they deemed to be better by the select committee, chaired by the Speaker of Parliament? Again, another one of the powers of the Speaker. The select committee, I think there needs to be more transparency. Need to tell people why were these 9 people chosen, right? Now, of the 9 people, 2 of them are friends of mine. One is Raj Joshua Thomas. He came on the show before. And the other one is, I'm quite excited, Dr. Syed Harun, one of the nicest guys I know. So I'm quite happy for him. He will be an NMP this round. And NMP serve 2.5-year terms, unlike NCMPs or elected MPs, which serve from election to election, right? So that one also, I find it a bit troubling because 2.5 years, what can you really do, right? How many parliamentary sittings? I think it should just be a normal term. That's something that, so 3 suggestions I would say. One is make the NMP normal term, election to one GE to another. Second is have more transparency on how these people are chosen, the names that were submitted and so on. And the final one is don't put it under the Parliamentary Select Committee, but you can put it under the presidency instead. Now, Nabila said, agreed, it's way too opaque, and Nabila has a personal experience. She was nominated by the arts community, quote unquote community, because there are communities, of course, but she was nominated by the arts community to be an NMP in the previous round, not this one, previous round, but the select committee didn't choose her, right? And we don't know. We don't know why she wasn't chosen, right? So I do think that it's too opaque, and we need to have more transparency. Final call. Anyone who wants to come on? Final one. But when you have a last question, make sure it's the last question, not 3 more last questions. If there is anybody, if there's none, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So there's none. Thank you so much. There are still, who makes up the select committee? So there will be an opposition member usually, and the rest will be PAP MPs, right? So some argue NMPs are just made up of so-called elites or high flyers. Well, yes, the NMP is an elitist scheme. It's a bunch of elites choosing another bunch of elites. Yes, it is an elitist scheme, right? So it is an undemocratic scheme, which I argue can be beneficial for democracy, because first of all, the NMPs, I think, they need to realize they have a lot of, they don't have a lot of power in the formal sense, but they have power in the sense that their votes legitimize a particular bill or not constitutional amendment, but a particular bill or a reading of a bill, right? And their vote, because they are non-partisan, their vote will be seen to either endorse or reject the government's suggestion or the opposition's one, right? So they are quite crucial in that regard. And I hope NMPs, when they take on that responsibility, that mantle, they understand the gravity of their votes and their positions. Okay, if there's nobody else who wants to come on, thank you so much for listening. I consider this group therapy, to be honest. But those are my thoughts for what has transpired in the previous weeks. I'll be happy to take it up with anyone. Sorry, I haven't been replying to people because I had too many messages. I thought I'll just address them in this, what has been a 2-hour episode, my longest episode so far, I think. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys, and of course there will be comments non-stop. I cannot continue reading them. I'll see you guys next week, where I have another Teh Tarik in real life session at Dakota Dreams with Ethos Books. Thank you, everyone. Good night.